Mel, Vice is set in an exclusive North Shore Catholic boys' school. Now,
That's right.
You have said that every school is a complex and unique network, inspiring, dangerous, eccentric, funny, and toxic.
Did I say that?
You said all of those things.
I was right.
Does this play encompass all of those aspects of the complexity?
I think you get bang for your buck on each of those levels. Yeah, schools, I mean, what you get on the prospectus is one thing. What you get in reality is different. It's like when you see a travel brochure. You go for a holiday at this glorious place. When you get there, there can be a bit of a difference in the reality.
Oh, so you've been to Noumea?
I've been to a few schools.
Well, indeed you have. In fact, you spent over 40 years teaching in, well, mostly in Jesuit schools around the world.
Yep.
What is it from your experience that you've learnt about those complex dynamics?
I admire within the academy the inspiration and the very high standards and the hopes that they have for their students. But I've also been around the traps long enough to know that there's an underbelly, there's a subculture. And look, teachers we're a very interesting breed. Colourful, ambitious, usually funny. They live on their wits and their wit, but also it can get pretty murky.
So what is that underbelly that you refer to? I mean, if you had to try and define it, because I imagine it's a fairly amorphous thing.
I think it's different agendas that people have and private or public eccentricities that may also perhaps hide some left field secrets. It's like any human being, like any institution, when these things either merge or collide, you've got a bit of a powder keg, and I've watched enough of them over my other career as a schoolmaster. I've watched enough of them to recognise the drama that happens.
So is part of the secret to successful teaching repressing those eccentricities or just channeling them?
Oh, certainly not repressing them, because there's an element of showbiz, I think, in university or school. But it's a matter of sometimes things can go a bit wild, and you never know what's going to be in the explosive mixture. Hence this play.
When I see the top line marketing around the play, that it's about an accusation of sexual assault in an elite institution, really.
Yep.
One immediately thinks, for example, of Mamet's Oleanna or John Shanley's Doubt. What, if anything, does this play share in common with those?
You put your finger on it there, Andrew, because years ago when I saw Oleanna with Kate Blanchett and Geoffrey Rush, I was astonished at the end when they came out to take their bows. Members of the audience started booing, depending on their political persuasion, and I thought...
They weren't booing the performance, they were booing the characters. Or...
Well, they were booing the performer. When you take a bow, it's the performer, not the character. But I thought it was brilliant the way David Mamet had divided the audience. I thought, when you can blur boundaries like that, wow. So I've set myself a small task there.
You think it makes a much more interesting conversation in the minds of the audience when those boundaries are blurred?
I have a feeling that Vice will probably divide audiences' sympathies. I hope so.
You've also said that one of the things about this play is that the tone of much of the machination is humorous. Why did you decide to apply a humorous brush to what might be, considered by many to be a very, very serious power?
Well, the subject matter is very serious. I mean, most examples of this are horrendous, vile tragedies. But schoolmasters, and particularly people who teach English, and particularly talented students and brilliant teachers, I think as I may have said, live on their wits and on their wit. So strangely enough, it's that sort of gallows humour, and there's a lot of it.
It's interesting, you see a little bit of that even in those who have come forward to the Royal Commission into child sexual assault in institutions. Now that obviously has been a dominant feature of our cultural landscape for a couple of years now.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. Tragically. Do you think that your play will have heightened resonance because of that?
Let's just say I think the times are right. It wasn't the reason I did it, because I heard Tom Stoppard once talking about how do you write a play, and everyone imagined that he was mathematically brilliant and had it all sorted out. He said, no, you take some really interesting characters, put them in an unusual situation, and start writing.
Yes.
And I took that as a bit of a masterclass.
Yes. Didn't Tom Stoppard say, when in doubt, start with a dead body?
If he didn't, you did.
I think he also said his favourite line in theatre was, Constable, arrest several of these vicars.
We'd be laughing at this. It's interesting how jokes reach their use-by date, isn't it?
Indeed. So that's Stoppard. How do you start a play?
Well, I follow the master. I'm not in the same class, obviously. But it's fascinating to sit down and say, OK, I know these characters. I can tell you that in Vice, I've taken 40 years of looking at my colleagues and myself, and I'm not so stupid as to have made one character. I can't afford the legal bills. But there's nothing that happens at all in the play that isn't something like what I've observed. But no, I sat down, put the characters there, and because of my background, I suppose, in directing, it's rather... I can hear the voice. When I write a character, I imagine an actor, and then I hope I hear the rhythms.
And what do you hope this play will do, if anything?
I think it'll give the audience an inside track on what can happen. Probably people outside the school, outside of school, probably they think it's pretty simple. Whereas in fact, Vice will take them into the multi-layered mess of motivations.
And do you think by opening up the complexity of that, it will allow for sympathy rather than for fierce judgment?
Look, I'm not an agitprop writer. Drama is about conflict, and it's about individual conflicts. So this is a story of a certain group of people when a certain thing happens. And I hope that's satisfying as drama. I'm not setting out to save the world. As I...
Nice tag.
Sorry?
Well, I like your tag.
I'll tell you one thing, Andrew. The hangman's rope has many twisted strands